I stood in the courthouse hallway, my hands trembling as I clutched the manila envelope containing the video that would change everything. The judge had just called a 15-minute recess, and through the courtroom doors, I could hear my father's lawyer arguing loudly, his voice dripping with condescension. In less than an hour, I would play my mother's final message, a video she had recorded 6 months before her death, knowing exactly what my father would do. And when that video played, when her voice filled that courtroom with the truth she had hidden to protect me until the right moment, my father's world would crumble, just as mine had crumbled the day he chose his mistress over his wife's memory. But before I tell you how we got here, before I share the moment that vindicated everything my mother had planned and everything I had fought for, I need you to do something for me. If this story resonates with you, if you have ever felt betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself and reclaiming what is rightfully yours. And comment below, tell me, have you ever had to fight for what you deserved? Your engagement helps this story reach others who need to hear it. Now let me take you back to where it all began, to the day that shattered my world and set me on this path of justice. 3 weeks earlier, I had stood in the same black dress at my mother's funeral, surrounded by people who pretended to grieve while secretly sizing up what they could gain from her death. The Hamilton Carter Ranch stretched out behind us, $3 billion worth of land that had been in my mother's family for 4 generations. Margaret Hamilton had built an empire, transforming her grandfather's modest cattle ranch into a sprawling estate that hosted charity events, bred championship horses, and operated as a wildlife sanctuary. She had been a force of nature, elegant and fierce, beloved by everyone who knew her. Everyone except apparently my father. The September sun beat down mercilessly on the gathered crowd of over 300 people. Politicians, business moguls, celebrities who had attended my mother's charity galas, and ordinary people whose lives she had touched stood in respectful silence. Or at least most of them did. Richard Carter stood at the front of the gathering, dry-eyed and distant, his hand resting possessively on the waist of a woman who had no business being there. Vanessa Moore wore a dress that was far too red, far too tight, and far too short for a funeral. The jewelry dripping from her neck and wrists belonged to my mother. I recognized every piece. The diamond necklace my mother wore on her 30th wedding anniversary. The emerald bracelet that had been a gift from my grandmother on my mother's 21st birthday. The pearl earrings she had worn in her official portrait that hung in the ranch's main hall. Vanessa wore them all with a smirk that made my stomach turn. I had known about Vanessa for exactly 4 months. I had discovered the affair by accident when I came home early from a veterinary conference in Boston and found text messages on my father's phone that he had carelessly left on the kitchen counter. The messages were explicit, cruel, and worst of all, they mocked my mother. Vanessa had written things like, "Does the old woman suspect yet? And I cannot wait until she is gone, and we can finally be together properly." My father's responses had been even worse. "Soon, darling. Very soon. She does not have much time left. The doctors gave her 6 months at most." That was when I learned my mother was dying. Not from her, not from my father, but from my father's mistress gloating about it in text messages. I had confronted my mother that same night, tears streaming down my face, begging her to tell me it was not true. She had taken my hands in hers, those elegant hands that had taught me to ride horses and braid hair and sign legal documents, and she had admitted everything. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed 8 months prior. She had been undergoing treatment, but it was not working. The doctors had given her less than a year to live. "Why did you not tell me?" I had demanded, my voice breaking. "How could you keep this from me?" "Because I needed you to live your life, sweetheart," she had said, her voice calm despite the tears in her own eyes. "You were building your veterinary practice. You were happy. I did not want you to spend the last months of my life watching me die. I wanted you to remember me alive and strong for as long as possible." "But Dad knows," I had said. "Dad knows, and he is cheating on you while you are dying. How can you stand it?" My mother had smiled then, a strange, knowing smile that I did not understand at the time. "Your father has always been weak, Olivia. I have known that for years. I stopped expecting him to be a good man a long time ago. But I have not stopped planning. Trust me, darling. Everything is going to be exactly as it should be." I had not understood what she meant. Not then. But standing at her funeral 4 months later, watching my father parade his mistress in front of everyone who had loved my mother, I was beginning to understand that my mother had been planning something far more elaborate than I could have imagined. I tried to approach my father to ask him what he was thinking, bringing her here like this, but he turned his back on me. The dismissal was so casual, so complete, that several people nearby noticed and looked away in embarrassment. I heard whispers rippling through the crowd. "Did you see that? He just ignored his own daughter. At his wife's funeral, with that woman hanging on him. Disgraceful." I stood there frozen as the pastor finished his eulogy and invited my father to say a few words. Richard stepped up to the microphone, cleared his throat, and began speaking about my mother's legacy. His words were hollow, practiced completely devoid of genuine emotion. He talked about honoring her memory, about preserving what she had built, about ensuring the ranch continued to thrive. Then he said the words that stopped my heart. "Your mother wanted this place to continue bringing joy to people," Richard announced to the crowd, his voice carrying across the silent gathering. "And I have decided the best way to honor her wishes is to entrust the ranch to someone who understands its value and potential." He pulled out a document from his jacket pocket, unfolding it with theatrical precision. "I am officially transferring ownership of the Hamilton Carter Ranch to Vanessa Moore, who will help me preserve and expand Margaret's vision for this beautiful place." The crowd erupted in whispers. Several of my mother's oldest friends gasped audibly. Dorothy Sinclair, my mother's college roommate and lifelong friend, actually said, no loud enough for people around her to hear. Senator Patricia Walsh, who had known my mother for 30 years, shook her head in obvious disgust. Even the pastor looked shocked, his mouth opening slightly, before he caught himself and schooled his expression back to neutral. I felt my knees buckle, but I locked them, refusing to fall. Vanessa stepped forward, taking the papers from my father's hands with a smile that was pure triumph. She looked directly at me as she accepted them, her eyes glittering with malicious glee. She actually winked. In front of 300 people at my mother's funeral, she winked at me. My father followed her gaze, saw me standing there with tears streaming down my face, and his expression hardened. He raised one hand slightly, a gesture that clearly meant stay silent, stay in your place, do not make a scene. But something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped like a wire pulled too tight for too long. I did not make a scene at the funeral. I did not scream or cry or throw myself at my father's feet, begging him to reconsider. Instead, I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest, replacing the grief and shock with absolute clarity. I turned and walked away from the gathering, away from the cameras and the whispers and Vanessa's mocking laughter, and I went back to the ranch house alone. The walk from the funeral site to the house took 15 minutes. 15 minutes during which I could hear the murmurs behind me growing louder. People were talking. People were angry. But none of them would do anything. They would gossip at their country clubs and their charity lunches, but they would not stand up to Richard Carter. He was too powerful, too well-connected, too willing to destroy anyone who crossed him. I had watched him ruin business partners, former friends, even family members who dared to question his decisions. My mother had protected me from the worst of it, but I had seen enough to know what my father was capable of when someone challenged him. The house felt enormous and empty without my mother's presence. I walked through halls lined with family photographs, past rooms filled with her books and her art collection and the antique furniture she had lovingly restored. Everything smelled like her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, the same scent she had worn every day for as long as I could remember. I found myself standing outside her study, a room my father had never been allowed to enter. My mother had been fiercely private about her workspace, and even I had only been inside a handful of times. The door was locked, but I knew where she kept the key, hidden inside a carved wooden box on the hall table. The study was exactly as she had left it. Her reading glasses sat on top of a stack of legal documents. Her favorite pen, the silver one with her initials engraved on the cap, rested in its holder. And there, right in the center of her desk where I could not possibly miss it, was a sealed envelope with my name written in her distinctive handwriting. Beside it sat a small USB drive attached to a note that read, "Play this only when you are ready to fight." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter several pages long, written in the careful script my mother had always used for important matters. "My darling Olivia, it began, 'If you are reading this, then I am gone, and your father has done exactly what I knew he would do. I am so sorry you had to witness his betrayal, but I need you to understand that I saw this coming. I have known about Vanessa for over a year. I knew about the others before her. I know that the man I married disappeared long ago, replaced by someone who values possessions over people and control over love." I stopped reading, my breath catching in my throat. Over a year. My mother had known about Vanessa for over a year long before I discovered those text messages. She had known and said nothing, done nothing, just watched and waited. I forced myself to keep reading. The letter went on to detail things I had never known, never even suspected. My mother had hired a private investigator 18 months before her death, long before her cancer diagnosis. She had suspected my father was having an affair, but she needed proof. The investigator had uncovered not just Vanessa, but 3 other women my father had been involved with over the past 5 years. Women he had showered with gifts bought with my mother's money. Women he had taken to hotels and restaurants flaunting his infidelity, while my mother smiled and played the perfect wife at charity events and business dinners. But that was not all the investigator found. My father had been embezzling from the ranch for years, siphoning money into offshore accounts and failed business ventures. He had lost millions on risky investments, always assuming my mother's family money would cover his mistakes. He had taken out loans using the ranch as collateral without my mother's knowledge or consent. He had forged her signature on documents. He had, in essence, been slowly destroying everything my mother and her family had built. When my mother received the cancer diagnosis, she had made a decision. She would not fight my father while she was alive. She would not waste her remaining time in ugly divorce proceedings and legal battles that would destroy me in the process. Instead, she would prepare. She would plan. She would set a trap so perfect, so ironclad, that my father would walk right into it and never see it coming. The letter explained everything in meticulous detail. 6 months before her death, my mother had met with Eleanor Blake, the best estate attorney in the state and one of my mother's closest friends since law school. Together, they had created something called the Hamilton Family Holdings Trust. My mother had quietly transferred 70% of the ranch's ownership into this trust, naming me as the sole beneficiary. She had done it carefully legally, with every document notarized and filed properly with the county registrar. The trust came with specific conditions. If Richard attempted to give away, sell, or transfer any portion of the ranch for personal reasons, particularly to benefit Vanessa Moore, specifically named in the trust documents, or any other romantic partner, the remaining 30% would automatically transfer to me as well, making me the sole owner. The trust was ironclad, designed to withstand any legal challenge. Eleanor had spent months making sure every word, every clause, every condition was absolutely bulletproof. But here is what made my mother's plan truly brilliant. She had not told my father about the trust. She had let him think he still controlled everything, that he could do whatever he wanted with her life's work once she was gone. She had predicted with devastating accuracy that he would be so arrogant, so confident in his power, that he would hand the ranch over to his mistress at my mother's own funeral, in front of witnesses, creating irrefutable evidence of his violation of the trust's terms. My mother had known my father better than he knew himself. She had known that his ego would not allow him to wait even a single day before asserting his dominance. She had known that he would want to humiliate me publicly to show everyone that he was in control and I was powerless. She had known, and she had used that knowledge to set a trap he had walked right into. The letter continued, "My darling girl, I know this is painful. I know you are probably crying right now, probably angry with me for not telling you any of this while I was alive. But I needed to protect you. Your father is a dangerous man when he feels threatened. If he had known I was planning this, he would have found a way to hurt you to get to me. I could not risk that. I could not risk him turning his rage on you before I had everything in place to protect you. I need you to do exactly as I say. Contact Eleanor Blake immediately. Her number is programmed into the burner phone in the bottom left drawer of my desk. Use that phone, not your regular one. Your father may have put spyware on your devices. Tell Eleanor the words Hamilton Legacy Protocol. She will know what to do. She has all the documents, all the evidence, everything you need to take back what is rightfully yours. But Olivia, listen to me carefully. Your father will fight. He will fight dirty. He will try to intimidate you, bribe you, manipulate you. He may even try to hurt you. Do not be alone with him. Do not trust anything he says. And most importantly, do not show him this letter or tell him about the trust until Eleanor says it is time. We need him to think he has won. We need him to get comfortable, to make mistakes, to give us even more evidence of his violations. Can you do that, my darling? Can you be strong enough to pretend for a little while longer? I know you can. You are my daughter. You have my strength and my grandmother's fire and your great-grandfather's stubborn refusal to accept defeat. You are going to win this, Olivia. You are going to take back our family's legacy. And when you do, I need you to promise me something. Do not let hatred consume you. Do not become cold and bitter like your father. Use this ranch to do good. Build something beautiful. Help people. That is the real legacy I want to leave you. Not the land or the money, but the knowledge that power should be used to lift others up, not to tear them down. I love you more than words can express. I am so proud of the woman you have become. And I will be with you every step of the way, watching from wherever mothers go when they leave their daughters behind. Be brave, my darling. Be strong. And never let anyone make you feel less than you are. The letter was signed with my mother's full name and dated exactly 6 months before her death. I sat there for a long time, reading and rereading it, tears streaming down my face. Then I opened the bottom left drawer of the desk and found the burner phone. It was a simple, prepaid phone with only one number programmed into it: Eleanor Blake. I picked up the USB drive with shaking hands and plugged it into my mother's computer. The video file loaded, and suddenly there she was, my mother, looking tired but determined, sitting in the same chair I was sitting in now. The video was dated the same day as the letter. She wore a simple blue blouse, her hair pulled back in the neat bun she always wore when she meant business. She looked directly at the camera, directly at me, and began to speak. "Olivia," my mother said, her voice steady despite the pain I could see in her eyes, "you are stronger than you know. Stronger than I was for too many years. I let your father diminish me bit by bit because I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought being a good wife meant accepting his infidelities, his disrespect, his slow destruction of everything I held dear. But real love does not demand you become less. Real love does not ask you to accept betrayal and disrespect. Real love does not require you to smile and pretend while someone destroys you from the inside out." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I am giving you the tools to fight back, not because I want revenge, although I admit the thought of Richard's face when he realizes what I have done gives me a certain satisfaction. I am doing this because I want you to understand your own worth. This ranch, this legacy, it belongs to you. Not because you are my daughter, though, that would be reason enough, but because you have earned it through every kind word, every hour of work, every moment of genuine care you have shown for this place and these animals and the people who work here." My mother leaned forward, her expression intense. "I have watched you grow up, Olivia. I have watched you choose kindness when cruelty would have been easier. I have watched you work 14-hour days helping sick animals, never asking for recognition or praise. I have watched you treat the ranch hands with respect, learning their names, asking about their families, caring about them as people rather than as servants. That is what makes you worthy of this legacy. Not your bloodline, but your character." She sat back, a sad smile crossing her face. "Your father does not understand that. He has never understood that worth is not measured in dollars or power or control. He thinks this ranch is valuable because it is worth $3 billion. But that is just numbers on paper. The real value of this place is in the horses we have saved, the wildlife we have protected, the children who have learned to ride here, the families who have made memories at our events. That is the legacy I want you to carry forward." My mother's expression hardened. "But before you can build that future, you have to fight for it. And Olivia, this is going to be ugly. Your father is going to try to destroy you. He is going to hire expensive lawyers, he is going to drag your name through the mud, he is going to tell lies about both of us. He is going to try to make you doubt yourself, doubt me, doubt everything you know to be true. Do not let him." She reached out as if she could touch me through the screen. "Eleanor has everything you need. Bank records showing your father's embezzlement. Private investigator reports documenting his affairs. Forged signatures on loan documents. Years of evidence proving he has been destroying this ranch financially while I struggled to keep it solvent. He thinks he is clever, but he is just arrogant. Arrogant men make mistakes. And I have documented every single one." My mother's voice softened. "When you play this video in court, and you will play it in court, I need you to remember something. I did not do this out of hatred. I did this out of love. Love for you, love for this ranch, love for the memory of my parents and grandparents who built this place. Love is not weakness, Olivia. Love is the strongest force in the world when it is combined with courage and truth." She looked directly at the camera, directly at my father, wherever he might be watching. "Richard, if you are watching this, then you have done exactly what I knew you would do. You have given my life's work, my family's legacy, to a woman you barely know simply because she makes you feel young and important. You have thrown away 30 years of marriage, a daughter who loved you despite everything and everything I built, all for your own ego. I hope it was worth it. I hope Vanessa's youth and flattery were worth losing everything. Because you have lost Richard. You have lost the ranch. You have lost your daughter. and you have lost whatever small piece of decency you might have once possessed." She turned back to me, her expression softening once more. "Olivia, my darling girl, if you are watching this, then you have found the courage to fight. I am so proud of you. I know this is painful. I know you wanted your father to be better than he is. We all want our parents to be heroes. But sometimes loving someone means accepting who they truly are and protecting yourself accordingly. This ranch is yours now. Build something beautiful here, sweetheart. Build something that honors memory without being trapped by the past. Build something that would make me proud. And know that I am always with you in every tree I planted, every trail I rode, every sunset over the western pasture. I love you, Olivia. Be strong. Be brave. And never let anyone make you feel less than you are." The video ended, and I sat in the darkness of the study, feeling my mother's presence surrounding me. She had given me everything I needed. Now I just had to be brave enough to use it. I picked up the burner phone and dialed Eleanor Blake's number. She answered on the second ring. "Hamilton Legacy Protocol," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. There was a pause then, Eleanor's voice warm and professional. "Olivia, I have been expecting your call. Are you somewhere safe?" "I am in Mom's study. Dad and Vanessa are still at the funeral reception. They think I ran away crying." "Good," Eleanor said. "Keep them thinking that. We need you to appear weak and broken for as long as possible. Can you do that?" I thought about my mother's words about the trap she had set, about the long game she had played. "Yes," I said. "I can do that." "Good girl. Listen to me carefully. Do not let your father know you have been in contact with me. Do not let him know you have found the letter or watched the video. Go back to the reception cry if you can let him see you devastated. Let Vanessa glowat. We want them confident. Overconfident. People make mistakes when they think they have already won." Eleanor paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. "I am going to need a few days to prepare. Your mother and I have been planning this for months, but there are still some documents that need to be filed. Can you stay at the ranch? Do you feel safe there?" He hesitated. "I do not know. Dad has never been physically violent, but Vanessa." "Do not be alone with her," Eleanor said firmly. "Stay in public areas of the house. Keep your door locked at night. If you have anywhere else you can stay, I would recommend it. But if you leave, do not tell your father where you are going. Make something up. Tell him you are going to stay with a friend for a few days, that you are too upset to be at the ranch." I considered my options. I could stay with my best friend Sarah, but she lived 3 hours away. That would make it harder to monitor what my father and Vanessa were doing at the ranch. "No," I said slowly. "I will stay. Mom asked me to be strong. This is me being strong." "Your mother would be very proud," Eleanor said gently. "Call me tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, from this phone. We will start putting the pieces in place. And Olivia, do not lose hope. Your mother was brilliant, and we are going to win this." I hung up and sat in the study for another hour, gathering my courage. Then I went back to the funeral reception, my eyes red from crying, my shoulders slumped in defeat. My father barely glanced at me when I walked in. Vanessa, however, watched me with undisguised satisfaction, a small smile playing at her lips. I avoided both of them, accepting condolences from my mother's friends, letting them see my grief and my apparent helplessness. More than one person pulled me aside to whisper that what my father had done was unforgivable, that they would testify if I needed them, that my mother deserved better. I thanked them quietly and filed their names away in my memory. I might need those testimonials. The reception finally ended near sunset. Most of the guests had left, though. A few stragglers remained talking in hushed voices about the scandal of the day. I helped the catering staff clean up, keeping myself busy, keeping my distance from my father and Vanessa. When I finally went back to the house, exhausted and emotionally drained, I found that they had already moved into the master bedroom. My mother's bedroom. The room she had died in just 2 weeks ago. I stood in the hallway outside that door, listening to Vanessa's high-pitched laughter and my father's lower voice. They were celebrating. On the day of my mother's funeral in her bed, they were celebrating their victory. I felt rage rise in my throat, like bile hot and choking. But I swallowed it down. Not yet. Not yet. I went to my own room, locked the door, and cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I woke to the sound of voices downstairs. It was barely 6 a.m., but my father and Vanessa were already up, already making plans. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. "We should redecorate immediately," Vanessa was saying. "This place is so dated. All this antique furniture and those hideous oil paintings. We need to modernize, make it sophisticated. Whatever you want, darling, my father replied. It is your house now. I heard the clink of coffee cups. We should throw a party, Vanessa continued. A big party, invite everyone important. Show them that there is new management here. Show that little girl that she has no power anymore. My father laughed. Olivia will not be a problem. She is too soft, too much like her mother. She will accept this and move on. She has always done what she is told. I backed away from the stairs before they could hear me, my heart pounding with anger and something else. Determination. They had no idea what was coming. No idea at all. I called Eleanor at exactly 9 a.m. from the burner phone. She answered immediately, and we talked for over an hour, going over every detail of my mother's plan. The trust was already in effect, Eleanor explained. The moment my father handed those papers to Vanessa at the funeral in front of hundreds of witnesses, he triggered the trust's violation clause. The question was not whether I would win. The question was how long it would take and how much damage my father would do in the meantime. We need to move fast, Eleanor said, but not too fast. We want them to start making changes, spending money, making promises they cannot keep. Every action they take now is evidence against them. Every change they make to the ranch, every piece of your mother's legacy they destroy, it all works in our favor. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my father and Vanessa systematically dismantle everything my mother had built. They fired the longtime ranch manager who had worked for my mother for 20 years, replacing him with Vanessa's cousin who knew nothing about horses or ranching. They closed down the wildlife sanctuary, sending the rehabilitating animals to other facilities because Vanessa thought they smelled bad. They canceled all the charity events my mother had scheduled for the rest of the year, claiming they needed time to rebrand. And they redecorated. Oh, how they redecorated. They hired an expensive interior designer from Los Angeles who ripped out my mother's carefully curated antique furniture and replaced it with modern pieces that looked like they belonged in a nightclub. They took down every family portrait, every photograph, every personal touch that made the ranch a home. They installed mirrors everywhere, huge, gaudy mirrors that reflected Vanessa's carefully made-up face back at her wherever she went. The worst part was the main hall. My mother's portrait, the beautiful oil painting that had hung above the fireplace for 20 years, was taken down and shoved into a storage closet. In its place, they hung an enormous gold-framed mirror, easily 8 feet tall, that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. When I saw it, when I realized they had literally erased my mother's face from her own home, something inside me turned to ice. I documented everything. Every change, every expense, every decision. I took photographs. I saved receipts I found in the trash. I recorded conversations when I could do so legally. And I sent everything to Eleanor, building our case piece by piece. The night they decided to throw their party, I almost broke my cover. Vanessa announced it at dinner, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We are going to have a celebration, she said. A new beginnings party. We will invite everyone who matters. Show them what we are doing with this place. My father nodded approvingly. Excellent idea. We should make it formal. Black tie. Really show people that the Hamilton Carter Ranch is entering a new era. What about me? I asked quietly. Am I invited to this party? Vanessa laughed, actually laughed. Oh, honey, I do not think that would be appropriate. This is our party. For our friends, you would just be uncomfortable. My father did not even look at me. Vanessa is right. You should probably make other plans that night. I excused myself from the table before I said something I would regret. I went straight to my room and called Eleanor. They are planning a party, I told her. A huge formal event to show off the ranch. Perfect, Eleanor said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. That is exactly what we need. We file the papers the day before the party. Then you show up as a guest and drop the bomb on them in front of all their friends. Can we do that? I asked. Is that legal? Completely legal, Eleanor assured me. You have every right to be on that property. In fact, you have more right than anyone. But we need to time this perfectly. I need you to find out the exact date of the party and get me a copy of the guest list if possible. Over the next week, I became a spy in my own home. I found the party invitations in Vanessa's office, elegant cardstock embossed with her initials. The party was scheduled for 3 weeks away, plenty of time for Eleanor to file all the necessary legal documents. The guest list read like a who's who of California society. Politicians, actors, business moguls, and of course, all the social climbers who wanted to befriend the new mistress of the Hamilton Carter Ranch. I photographed everything and sent it to Eleanor. Then I helped the planning process, volunteering to coordinate with the caterers and florists, making myself useful so neither my father nor Vanessa would suspect anything. They were so confident in their victory that they did not even question why I was being cooperative. Vanessa actually told her friends in my hearing that I had finally accepted my place. 2 days before the party, Eleanor filed the legal papers with the county court. The trust documents the violation evidence and a petition to recognize me as the sole legal owner of the ranch. My father would be served with papers the morning of the party, giving him just hours to panic before all his friends arrived to witness his humiliation. But Eleanor had one more surprise for me. "Your mother made a second video," she told me over the phone. "This one is specifically for the court. It is even more detailed than the first one you watched. She walks through every financial record, every piece of evidence, every reason why she did what she did. It is absolutely devastating, Olivia. When the judge sees this, there will be no question about the outcome." "When do we play it?" I asked. "At the party," Eleanor said. "We crash the party, serve your father with papers in front of everyone, and play your mother's video on the big screen they are renting for the event. Let everyone see what he has done. Let them all know the truth." I felt a surge of something that was part excitement, part fear, part vindication. My mother had planned this perfectly. She had known exactly what my father would do, and she had prepared for every contingency. All I had to do was see it through. The day of the party arrived. I woke early, my stomach churning with nerves. I could hear Vanessa downstairs barking orders at the catering staff, sending people running with her demands. My father was on the phone in his study, talking to someone about business deals, already spending money he thought he had but did not. Neither of them knew that at 9 a.m. that morning, a process server had arrived at Eleanor's office to pick up the legal documents that would change everything. At exactly 9:30, while I was getting ready in my room, I heard the doorbell ring. Then I heard shouting. My father's voice, loud and angry. Vanessa's higher-pitched voice joining in. I crept to the top of the stairs and watched as the process server, a calm, middle-aged woman with a clipboard, handed my father a thick envelope of papers. "Richard Carter," she said in a clear voice, "you are being served with notice of legal action regarding the ownership and management of the Hamilton Carter Ranch. You are required to appear in court on October 15th to respond to these allegations. Have a nice day." She left before my father could react. He stood in the doorway, papers in hand, his face turning from white to red to purple. Then he started reading, and I watched the color drain from his face entirely. He staggered back, leaning against the wall for support. Vanessa snatched the papers from his hands and started reading, her eyes growing wider with each page. "What is this?" she demanded. "What is the Hamilton Family Holdings Trust? What violation clause? Richard, what did you do?" "I did not do anything," my father sputtered. "Margaret did this. Margaret set me up. She set us up." They stood there in the grand entrance hall, surrounded by flowers and decorations for their party, reading the papers that spelled out their downfall. And I stood at the top of the stairs watching them realize they had lost before the battle had even begun. The party was scheduled to start at 7 p.m. I spent the day away from the ranch meeting with Eleanor to go over our final strategy. She had everything prepared. The trust documents, the financial records, the private investigator reports, and most importantly, my mother's second video, the one she had made specifically for public viewing. "Are you ready for this?" Eleanor asked me as we sat in her office going through the timeline one last time. "Once we walk into that party, there is no going back. Your father will fight with everything he has." I thought about my mother, about the months she had spent planning this while dying, about the strength it must have taken to keep her secret even from me. I thought about the ranch, about the legacy she wanted me to protect. And I thought about my father and Vanessa celebrating their victory in my mother's home, destroying everything she had built. "I am ready," I told Eleanor. We arrived at the ranch at 7:30, deliberately late. The party was already in full swing. The circular driveway was packed with expensive cars, valets rushing back and forth. The entrance to the main house was lit up with thousands of tiny white lights, and I could hear music and laughter drifting from inside. Eleanor and I walked up to the front door, and I felt my heart hammering in my chest. The security guard at the door, someone Vanessa had hired from a private firm, stepped forward to stop us. "I am sorry, this is a private event. Do you have an invitation?" Eleanor pulled out her business card and handed it to him. "Eleanor Blake, attorney at law. I am here on official business regarding the ownership of this property. This is Olivia Hamilton Carter, the legal owner of this ranch. We do not need an invitation to enter her own home." The guard looked confused, glancing between us and the card. He pulled out his phone, presumably to call my father, but Eleanor stepped past him. If you attempt to prevent us from entering, you will be charged with unlawful restraint and interference with legal property rights. I suggest you step aside. We walked into the main hall, and the scene that greeted us was like something from a nightmare. The space my mother had designed as a warm, welcoming gathering place had been transformed into a gaudy nightclub. Mirrors everywhere reflecting the colored lights that swept across the room. Modern furniture that looked uncomfortable and cold. And at the center of it all, standing beneath that enormous gold-framed mirror where my mother's portrait should have been, were my father and Vanessa. Vanessa wore a silver dress that probably cost more than the average car, covered in sequins that caught every light. Her hair was piled high on her head, and she wore jewelry I had never seen before, probably new pieces my father had bought her with money from the ranch accounts. She was holding court with a group of admirers, her laughter loud and shrill when she spotted me. Her face went from triumphant to shocked to furious in the space of a heartbeat. "What is she doing here?" Vanessa demanded loudly enough that people nearby turned to look. "Richard, I thought we agreed she was not invited." My father pushed through the crowd toward us, his face already red with anger. He had clearly been drinking, his movements slightly unsteady. "Olivia, you need to leave. This is a private party. You are trespassing." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice calm and professional. "Mr. Carter, as I am sure you read in the legal documents served to you this morning, your daughter is the legal owner of this property. She cannot trespass on her own land. However, you are currently violating the terms of the Hamilton Family Holdings Trust, and every person in this room is a witness to that violation." The music stopped. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to us, 200 of California's social elite watching the drama unfold. I could see my mother's friends in the crowd, Dorothy Sinclair and Senator Walsh and others, their faces showing a mixture of confusion and hope. "This is ridiculous," my father blustered. "Margaret left me this ranch. I have the paperwork. I filed the transfer documents." "Documents that are null and void," Eleanor said, pulling out a folder from her briefcase. "Your late wife created the Hamilton Family Holdings Trust 6 months before her death, transferring 70% of the ranch ownership to your daughter. The trust specifically states that any attempt to transfer, gift, or sell the property for personal romantic reasons would result in automatic forfeiture of your remaining ownership stake." "She is lying," Vanessa shrieked, pushing forward. "This is some kind of trick. Margaret is dead. She cannot do anything anymore." "Actually," Eleanor said, pulling out a tablet from her briefcase, "Mrs. Carter anticipated that you would make that claim. She prepared a video explanation of her intentions. With the permission of the property owner," she nodded toward me, "I would like to play that video for everyone here tonight." I looked out at the crowd of people, at their curious faces, at my father's fury and Vanessa's panic, and I nodded. "Play it." Eleanor connected her tablet to the party's sound system and projector. The screen that had been set up to show a slideshow of photos from the ranch's renovation now displayed my mother's face. She looked directly at the camera, at all of us gathered in her home, and began to speak. "Good evening," my mother said, her voice clear and strong. "If you are watching this, then my plan has worked exactly as I intended. My name is Margaret Eleanor Hamilton Carter, and I am recording this message to explain why I have taken the actions I have taken regarding the Hamilton Carter Ranch." The room was completely silent. Even the catering staff had stopped moving, frozen in place. My mother continued, her voice steady and calm. "I have been married to Richard Carter for 30 years. For the first 10 of those years, I believed I had married a good man. A man who would be my partner, who would help me build something meaningful with the legacy my family left me. I was wrong. Richard is not a good man. He is a weak man, a vain man, and a man who has spent our entire marriage treating my family's legacy as his personal bank account." My father made a sound like a strangled gasp. Several people in the crowd turned to look at him, their expressions shifting from curiosity to judgment. My mother pulled out a stack of papers, holding them up to the camera. "These are bank records showing systematic embezzlement over the past 8 years. Richard has siphoned over $12 million from the ranch's operating accounts into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. He has used this money to fund failed business ventures, to pay off gambling debts, and to support a series of mistresses, including but not limited to Vanessa Moore, the woman he has chosen to give my family's ranch to." Vanessa let out a sound somewhere between a scream and a sob. People in the crowd started whispering, pulling out phones, some of them quietly moving toward the exits. My mother set down the papers and looked directly at the camera. I could have divorced Richard years ago. I could have exposed him publicly and taken everything from him. But I had two reasons for not doing so. First, I did not want to put my daughter through the ugliness of a public divorce. Olivia deserves better than to watch her parents destroy each other in court. Second, I knew that the moment Richard thought he was free of me, he would move to take everything. And I wanted him to believe he had won. I wanted him to be so confident, so arrogant, that he would violate the trust terms in the most public way possible. She leaned forward, her expression hardening. Richard, if you are watching this, know that I have documentation of everything. Every affair, every forged signature, every illegal transfer of funds. I have given all of this evidence to Eleanor Blake, who will present it in court if necessary. But more than that, I wanted everyone to know the truth about you. I wanted your friends, your business associates, everyone who respected you to see exactly who you are. A man who would give away his dead wife's legacy at her funeral. A man who would betray his own daughter for a woman young enough to be that daughter. A man without honor, without integrity, without any redeeming qualities whatsoever. My father collapsed into a nearby chair, his face in his hands. Around us, I could hear the whispers growing louder, could see people filming on their phones, could feel the shift in the room as everyone processed what they were hearing. My mother's expression softened as she turned her attention away from my father. Olivia, my darling girl, if you are watching this, then you have been brave enough to fight. I am so proud of you. This ranch is yours now, completely and legally. I have made sure that Richard cannot contest this. I have made sure that Vanessa gets nothing. And I have made sure that you have the resources and the legal support to rebuild everything that I know they will have tried to destroy. She paused, and I could see tears in her eyes. Build something beautiful, sweetheart. Take this land that has been in our family for 4 generations and make it into something that matters. Not a trophy or a status symbol, but a place that does good in the world. Help people. Help animals. Create something that will outlast all of us and make the world a little bit better. That is the legacy I want for you. Not anger, not revenge, but purpose. My mother looked directly at the camera one last time. To everyone watching this, I ask you to remember something. Legacy is not about what you own. It is about what you build, what you give, and what you leave behind that has meaning. Richard has spent 30 years taking, destroying, and hoarding. He has left nothing of value except damage and pain. But Olivia will build something beautiful. She has the strength, the compassion, and the vision to turn this ranch into something extraordinary. Support her. Believe in her. And remember that true power comes not from control but from love. The video ended. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Dorothy Sinclair started clapping. Slowly, at first, then faster, and within seconds, half the room had joined her. People were applauding, my mother applauding me, while my father sat broken in his chair, and Vanessa stood frozen beneath that ridiculous gold mirror. Senator Walsh walked over to me and took my hands in hers. Your mother was an extraordinary woman, she said, her voice thick with emotion, and you are clearly her daughter. If there is anything I can do to help you rebuild this place, anything at all, please let me know. Other people approached, offering support, apologizing for attending the party, some of them visibly crying. Within 30 minutes, the party had completely dissolved. Guests left in droves, many of them stopping to shake my hand or hug me on their way out. The catering staff began quietly packing up, and I overheard the event planner telling Eleanor that she was waiving her fee because she wanted no association with what Vanessa and my father had done. Vanessa was the first to break. She ran out of the main hall, her heels clicking on the marble floor, sobbing dramatically. I heard a car start in the driveway minutes later, tires squealing as she fled. I would learn later that she left the state that same night, abandoning her belongings and disappearing completely. She left behind a trail of debt, unpaid bills in my father's name, and a reputation so thoroughly destroyed that she could never show her face in California society again. My father sat in that chair for another hour, staring at nothing. The room emptied around him until it was just me, Eleanor, and him. Finally, he looked up at me, and I barely recognized him. The confident, arrogant man who had stood at my mother's funeral and given away her legacy was gone. In his place was a broken shell, aged and defeated. How long? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. How long did she know? About Vanessa. Over a year. About your embezzlement. Much longer. Eleanor's voice was cold, professional. Mrs. Carter was a brilliant woman, Mr. Carter. She spent years documenting your crimes. Every forged signature, every illegal transfer, every violation of fiduciary duty. We have enough evidence to send you to prison if we chose to pursue criminal charges. My father flinched. Are you going to press charges? I looked at Eleanor and she looked at me. It was my decision to make. I thought about everything my father had done. The betrayal, the cruelty, the years of disrespect toward my mother. I thought about how he had treated me at the funeral, how he had been willing to throw me away for Vanessa. I thought about all the pain he had caused. But I also thought about what my mother had said in her video. About not letting hatred consume me. About building something beautiful instead of tearing things down. About being better than the people who had hurt me. No, I said finally. No criminal charges. But you are going to sign over everything. Every remaining asset, every account, every piece of property that is in your name. You are going to sign it all over to me, and then you are going to leave this ranch and never come back. My father nodded, too defeated to even argue. Eleanor pulled out the documents she had already prepared, and my father signed them with shaking hands. He did not even read them. He just signed page after page, giving up everything he had left. When it was done, he stood slowly like an old man. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. What? Did your mother really love me? Ever? Or was I always just a mistake to her? I looked at my father at the wreckage of the man he had become, and I told him the truth. She loved you for the first 10 years. She told me once that you were charming and ambitious and full of dreams. But then you changed. Or maybe you just stopped pretending to be someone you were not. Either way, the man she married disappeared a long time ago. The man standing here now is someone she stopped loving years before she died. My father nodded, tears running down his face. I am sorry, he whispered. I know it does not matter now, but I am sorry. He walked out of the main hall, out of the house, and got into his car. I watched from the window as he drove down the long driveway, lined with oak trees, past the gates and out of my life. I would see him one more time several weeks later, but that night was the last time Richard Carter had any claim to the Hamilton Carter Ranch. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Douglas Pritchard, the expensive lawyer my father hired, tried every angle he could think of to break the trust or prove it was invalid. He claimed my mother was mentally incompetent when she created it, despite clear medical records proving otherwise. He argued that the trust terms were too vague, despite the extremely specific language Eleanor had used. He even tried to claim that I had unduly influenced my mother, a laughable assertion, given that I had not even known about the trust until after her death. Eleanor demolished every argument. She presented bank records showing the embezzlement. She presented testimony from ranch employees who had witnessed my father's affairs and his financial mismanagement. She presented the private investigators' reports complete with photographs and detailed documentation. And she presented my mother's videos, both the private one for me and the public one we had played at the party. The trial, when it finally happened, was almost anticlimactic. The judge reviewed the evidence for less than 2 hours before making her ruling. This court finds that Richard Carter did knowingly and willfully violate the terms of the Hamilton Family Holdings Trust by attempting to gift the ranch property to Vanessa Moore for personal romantic reasons. The trust's contingency clause is hereby activated. The court recognizes Olivia Hamilton Carter as the sole legal owner of the Hamilton Carter Ranch and all associated properties and assets. Mr. Carter's transfer of property to Miss Moore is declared null and void. Furthermore, given the evidence of financial malfeasance and embezzlement presented to this court, the court finds that Mr. Carter has violated his fiduciary duties as co-owner of marital property and orders him to pay restitution to the estate in the amount of $12 million plus interest. This decision is final. The gavel came down. My father sat motionless at the defense table. Pritchard looked stunned, probably for the first time in his career, facing a case he absolutely could not win. I sat perfectly still, feeling nothing at first, just a strange numb sensation spreading through my body. Then Eleanor's hand closed over mine, warm and steady, and I felt something break open inside my chest. Not breaking apart. Breaking open. Like something that had been locked away for a very long time finally being released. We walked out of the courthouse together into a wall of camera flashes and shouted questions from reporters. The case had become national news. The story of a dying woman who had set the perfect trap for her cheating husband, the dramatic video at the party, the complete destruction of a powerful man who thought he was untouchable. It was the kind of story that captivated people. I stopped at the top of the courthouse steps, looking out at the crowd, and suddenly I knew exactly what to say. Legacy is not about ownership, I said, my voice carrying across the crowded plaza. It is not about control or possession. Legacy is about what you build, what you nurture, and what you leave behind that has meaning. My mother understood that. She built something beautiful and she protected it the only way she could. I will honor her by continuing that work, by making the Hamilton Carter Ranch, now renamed Margaret's Meadow, a place of healing and hope and life. That is what legacy means. Not greed, not vanity, but love. The reporters shouted more questions, but Eleanor and I got into her car and drove away. We went back to the ranch to Margaret's Meadow, and I walked through the house that was finally truly mine. The first thing I did was take down that ridiculous gold mirror. It took 4 people to carry it out, and we donated it to a theater company that could use it for props. Then I retrieved my mother's portrait from the storage closet where Vanessa had shoved it. The frame was slightly damaged, but the painting itself was perfect. We hung it back above the fireplace where it belonged. Over the next few months, I systematically undid everything Vanessa had done. The modern furniture was sold or donated. I brought back the antique pieces my mother had loved, and where pieces were missing, I found similar items at estate sales and auctions. I rehired the ranch manager Vanessa had fired, offering him a significant raise and a formal apology. I reopened the wildlife sanctuary and brought back the animals that had been sent away. I reinstated all the charity events my mother had planned. But I also made changes of my own. I established a therapeutic writing program for children with disabilities, something my mother had talked about doing but never had time to implement. I created a scholarship fund for veterinary students, offering full tuition to 3 students each year who wanted to specialize in equine or wildlife medicine. I started a summer camp for kids from underserved communities, giving them a chance to experience ranch life and learn about animals and nature. Every dollar the ranch generated went back into these programs. I took a modest salary for myself, enough to live comfortably but nothing extravagant. The ranch was not about making money anymore. It was about making a difference. 6 weeks after the trial, on a cold November afternoon, I was in the main barn helping our head trainer work with a rescue horse that had been severely abused by its previous owners. The horse, a beautiful chestnut mare we had named Phoenix, was slowly learning to trust humans again. It was delicate work requiring patience and gentleness, and I was so focused on Phoenix that I did not notice the figure standing at the barn entrance until the trainer cleared his throat and nodded toward the door. I turned and saw my father. I almost did not recognize him. Richard Carter had always been impeccably dressed, always perfectly groomed, always radiating wealth and power. The man standing at the barn entrance looked like he had aged 20 years in the 2 months since the trial. His clothes were rumpled and cheap, clearly purchased from a discount store. His hair, always so carefully styled, was thin and gray and uncombed. He looked small and lost and completely broken. I handed Phoenix's lead rope to the trainer and walked toward my father slowly. He did not speak at first, just stood there looking at me like he did not know where to start. Finally, he said, "I came to apologize." I waited. I did not make it easy for him. "I was wrong," he continued, his voice hoarse like he had been crying. "About everything. About Vanessa. About your mother. About you. I was arrogant and stupid and cruel, and I destroyed everything that mattered because I was too proud to see what I had. Your mother tried to tell me. She tried for years, but I would not listen. I thought I knew better. I thought I deserved more. And now I have nothing. Is that why you are apologizing?" I asked quietly. "Because you have nothing. Or because you are actually sorry?" He flinched like I had struck him. "Both," he admitted. "I am sorry because I lost everything. But I am also sorry because I finally understand what I lost. Your mother was not just beautiful and successful. She was kind. She was patient. She gave me chance after chance to be a better man, and I threw every chance away. And you, Olivia, you are exactly like her. Strong and smart and good. And I tried to break you the way I broke her. I am so sorry." I looked at my father, really looked at him, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not forgiveness exactly. Not even pity. But a kind of sad acceptance. He was never going to be the father I wanted. He was never going to be the husband my mother deserved. He was just a broken man who had made terrible choices and would have to live with the consequences. "I forgive you, Dad," I said, finally. "Not because you deserve it. Not because what you did was okay. But because carrying anger and hate would poison me the way it poisoned you. I forgive you so I can let go and move forward. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. You lost your right to be part of my life the day you handed Mom's legacy to your mistress. I understand, he whispered. I do not have the right to ask, but can I see the ranch one more time? See what you are doing with it. I considered saying no. Part of me wanted to tell him to leave and never come back. But another part of me, the part that sounded like my mother's voice in my head, reminded me that cruelty would not heal anything. Once I said, "You can visit once, but you come as a guest, not as an owner. You come to see what real legacy looks like." I showed him around the ranch over the next hour. I showed him Margaret's Meadow, as I had renamed it, and explained the programs I was developing. I took him to the therapeutic riding arena, where a 10-year-old girl with cerebral palsy was having her first lesson, her face lit up with joy as she sat on a gentle mare. I showed him the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where we were nursing an injured red-tailed hawk back to health. I took him to the education building where local school groups came to learn about conservation and animal care. My father walked through the transformed spaces in silence. The master bedroom where he had celebrated with Vanessa was now an office for the ranch's growing staff. The formal dining room where they had thrown that horrible party was now a classroom for the writing program. My mother's portrait was back above the fireplace in the main hall, restored to its rightful place, and beside it I had hung a new photograph I had found in her study, a candid shot of her laughing on horseback, wind in her hair, completely free and happy. At the end of the tour, I walked my father to his car, an old sedan that had clearly seen better days. Before he got in, I handed him an envelope. "What is this?" he asked. "A chance," I said. "There is enough money in there for you to start over somewhere else. Get an apartment. Find a job. Build something small and honest. Mom would want you to have a chance even if you do not deserve it. So I am giving you one. Not because I owe you anything, but because mercy is part of the legacy she taught me." He opened the envelope with shaking hands, saw the check inside, and his eyes filled with tears. "I do not deserve this," he said. "No," I agreed. "You do not. But take it anyway. And do better, Dad. Do better than you did with us." He nodded, unable to speak, and got into his car. I watched him drive away down the long road lined with oak trees my great-great-grandfather had planted over a century ago, and I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Not happiness exactly. The wounds were too fresh for that. But peace. The war was over. That was 8 months ago. Today, Margaret's Meadow is thriving. We have 12 kids in the therapeutic riding program, 3 dozen animals in the wildlife center, and we have already awarded our first round of scholarships. The ranch is alive with laughter and hope and purpose. My mother's legacy is not just preserved. It is growing, evolving, becoming something even more beautiful than what she built. I stand in the main hall sometimes, looking up at her portrait, and I talk to her. I tell her about the new foal that was born last week, about the 7-year-old girl with cerebral palsy who rode a horse for the first time yesterday and cried with joy. I tell her about the great horned owl we released back into the wild after nursing it back to health. I tell her about the good days and the hard days, and the moments when I miss her so much I can barely breathe. And sometimes when the light hits the portrait just right, I swear I can see her smile. Legacy is not about what you inherit. It is about what you do with what you are given. It is about fighting for what matters, protecting what you love, and building something that outlasts your own pain. My mother taught me that, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring that lesson. So here is what I want to ask you. Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted and had to find the strength to stand up and take back your power? If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that you are stronger than you think, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about resilience, justice, and finding your own strength in the darkest moments. And comment below, share your story, tell me how you fought back or how you are still fighting. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage. Remember, you are not alone in this struggle. There are thousands of us who have faced betrayal, who have had to stand up to people we loved, who have had to choose ourselves when no one else would choose us. And we survived. We thrived. And so will you. Because in the end, that is what legacy really means. Passing on strength, hope, and the unshakable knowledge that we are all capable of, far more than we ever imagined. Never forget your worth. Never settle for less than you deserve. And never ever let anyone convince you that love means accepting disrespect. Real love lifts you up. Anything less is just control wearing a pretty mask. Fight for yourself the way my mother fought for me. And when you win, and you will win, build something beautiful with that victory. Build something that matters. Build something that would make the people who believed in you proud. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go write your own ending. Make it a good one.